You know, Phil Rucker, I feel like your exchange with the president on Thursday foreshadowed a little bit this unraveling. Just take everybody through everything that's transpired since that. I think a statement on the part of this president that'll go down as sort of as significant as good people on both sides in Charlottesville, as grabbing women in the bleep. His suggestion is musing that people might inject disinfectants to clean their lungs.
Well, Nicole, just as an illustration of how politically damaging that moment was for the president, look at how it's taken now 3 full days for the administration to come up with an explanation for what happened. At first, the White House accused media outlets of misrepresenting the president's comments, even though they were plain to the naked eye on videotape. And then we heard the president claim he was trying to be sarcastic, but there was no trace of sarcasm in the exchange and in what he said at that news conference. And then we heard from Dr. Deborah Birx over the weekend say that this is just how the president likes to have these discussions out loud. He was talking to the Department of Homeland Security official, and this is sort of his normal process for discussing new information, as if this were part of his genius that makes him such a smart guy. The issue is that this all played out on national television, on live television, before tens of millions of Americans, many of whom tune into these briefings to try to get raw information, facts, guidance, statistics, really instruction from Washington, from their leaders about how to manage this pandemic. And the president has been using that platform to float theories, to rage against his enemies and his critics, and to praise himself.
Let me show you, Dr. Gupta, what a Republican governor had to say this weekend about why what Phil Rucker's talking about matters.
People listen to these press conferences. They listen when the governor holds a press conference, and they certainly pay attention when the president of the United States is standing there giving a press conference about something as serious as this worldwide pandemic. And I think when misinformation comes out, or you just say something that pops in your head, it does send a wrong message. And we had hundreds of calls come into our emergency hotline at our health department asking if it was right to ingest Clorox or alcohol cleaning products, whether that was going to help them fight the virus. So we had to put out that warning to make sure that people were not doing something like that, which would kill people actually to do it.
Dr. Gupta.
He's right. Governor Hogan's right. The New York Times had a great piece of reporting just late last week saying prescriptions of hydroxychloroquine shot up 40 times right after the president used his bully pulpit to say maybe we should be prescribing hydroxychloroquine in the absence of definitive data. So what he says matters. It's not a joke. It's not sarcasm. People listen to the president. In an ideal world, we could all listen to the president as a trustworthy disseminator of information. That's not the case. It's not been the case since this entire outbreak has started. And you know what the unintended, or maybe it's intended consequence, is that Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci spend more time on defense than they do talking about things that really matter. Like, for example, the more we learn about coronavirus, the more we're realizing that people don't clear the virus from their nostrils for 21 days. 21 days, and we're still talking about 14 days for self-isolation. Why aren't we hearing more about that push and pull? Should we be thinking 21 days? We need that guidance. Saliva testing. I've been on this bandwagon now for the last few weeks. There's compelling data out of Yale, corroborating data out of Rutgers, and new tech out of Rutgers saying saliva is better than the nasopharyngeal swab, that swab that we so desperately are lacking. We need to be hearing about these scientific studies and what's right, what's wrong, what do people think? And unfortunately, Dr. Birx spends a lot of time on defense. We have empathy for her, but we need to hear more about the science and what's new.
Dr. Gupta, let me give you the floor then. Tell us more about the science. What else do we know now about COVID that we didn't know just a few weeks ago?
There's a few things. First of all, there's all this hemming and hawing. WHO has been talking about new guidelines on antibody testing. And let's be clear, we just don't know enough about antibody testing because right now, all the different tests, there's 100 different tests, some of which have actually been vetted, other ones have not been vetted. And it doesn't allow us to make a comment on whether or not if you have a positive test, that might mean you're protected from reinfection. We just don't know that. But people are making grand statements both ways. We need Dr. Birx to be able to spend more time talking about that, not about disinfectant that the president's talking about. What we do also know is saliva testing is possibly the way to mass testing. And let's see if we can do self-collection at home. Dr. Fauci isn't able to talk enough about that because he's covering the president on something that he may or may not have said. So these are the things that we should be talking about. 21-day quarantines, I'm just citing the evidence. Don't take my word for it. It's taking 21 days at minimum for people to clear the virus. What does that mean? Should that impact our SOPs or should it not? But we need guidance.
Rick Stengel, I have 37 questions for you. I think the bottom line is you need a podcast or somebody does. But Rick Stengel, just take up this theme of displacement. I mean, it's not just that the president stands there and says things that are dangerous, in the words of Maryland Governor Hogan, and Washington State immediately had to put out a statement. And all weekend you saw the great reporting in the Washington Post and the New York Times about the political freefall, basically, that the president is in because of those comments. But as Dr. Gupta is saying, it also has every action has a reaction. And the reaction is we've now pushed out the exact forum where people are going for the kind of hope, the kind of information, the kind of education about what the conversations they should be having with their physicians if they're not well, are almost being displaced by all the dysfunction from this White House.
Yes, I mean, not to go too far in the future, but someday I think historians will look back in amazement that we had presidents that weren't technologists and weren't scientists and were scientifically illiterate like Donald Trump. I mean, not only is he scientifically illiterate about ingesting Clorox into the body. Remember, he said wind turbines cause cancer. He made those statements about, steam engines being better on aircraft carriers rather than digital ones. So it's really the person whose word should be golden, who should be tested more than anything else, is the disseminator in chief of conspiracy theories and disinformation. I mean, it's a really, really dangerous thing. And I think, one of the things, just, hearing the governor say that so many people called in about whether they should use Clorox or something like that. I mean, I think those of us who are doing this all the time forget that so many Americans just can't believe that the president of the United States is a pathological liar who is ignorant of almost everything that he's talking about, that they just can't believe it. And that's what we see over and over. And that is why it's so dangerous. I mean, just listening to Dr. Gupta a minute ago, it's like, it's a breath of fresh air. I mean, even what he said about 21 days was news to people like me who've been watching presidential news conferences. Why is that? That's a mistake. That's a problem with what they're doing. So I don't know what the solution is, unless it's just to let the scientists talk or the president to be a scientist, one or the other, or both.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.